$50 for a year to do that. I think it's a great service. Leica has a solution too. So there's a couple different ways to skin that cat. So here's a little video of how the WebShare platform works for those of you who haven't seen it. And I'll show you a little bit of how we're kind of hybriding the Matterport technology with the Faro technology, just a little bit, to have them talk to each other. So here we are in the WebShare, and what I'm just demonstrating here is when you zoom in and out, it sort of breaks out the scans. I'll back up a little bit. Let's see if I can. Maybe I can. Well, I think I'm just going to let it go. So we can zoom in and out on the scans and we can break them out. And is there a way that you can hit play on this particular slide here, just manually? Because there's something important at the end that I want to show of this particular video. See if that works. And it also gives you the option to reference that into the actual location it is on the planet, obviously. When we look at this right now we're just looking at the 2D floor plans. You can switch between floor plans, but you can also, if you upload it, and I keep hitting the wrong button, let's do this one more time. I'm technically challenged up here. Go ahead, and just advance it a little bit down at the bottom of the slider bar. There you go, perfect. Awesome. Laser. So this 3D button, you have to upload the 3D data separately. There's a few little bugs with the Faro Scene WebShare Cloud, and that is that it won't take large data sets unless you upload them piecemeal. So what WebShare has developed now is a new version 2.3. Are there any WebShare Cloud users in here? Has anybody used that? A few people, good. So you probably have ran into some issues with trying to upload the data. Well, you can break these out into CPE files now. So you have to take your data set using Project Point Cloud, which is this algorithm that takes Octree technology and it sort of takes the point cloud and it pre-renders it in such a way that it sort of zips around really fast. So if you have a large data set, you can look at that very quickly. Well, you can break that rendering up into pieces called CPE files, and then you can upload them in piecemeal into the cloud, and that's how you get into the 3D mode. So this is the Matterport particular model. We're in the model right now, and you can hyperlink those Matter tags. And so I hyperlinked it to the Faro WebShare in the same location. And that's kind of cool because our client now who's using this data, this was Bean Hall, which is a University of Oregon project. They can go into the Matterport model and zip around very quickly and then click on the link if they want to take a measurement, which takes them into the Faro cloud data. As long as you're logged in, it will flip back and forth and then take their accurate measurements. So they're kind of using the two in tandem because moving in 3D and the Faro WebShare cloud is a little clunky, a little slow. So that's one of the sort of solutions that we came to with that. And Matterport continues to develop some of their technologies, and we're working out the measurement issue that people have been talking about with Matterport as far as how accurate is it really. And we'll be talking about that more over time, I'm sure. So this is the WebShare, Faro WebShare Cloud. It's just the new version 2.3. This is about 400 laser scans that can be viewed in real time in the cloud. It's pretty zippy, and it allows you to take measurements and jump into pano views, bubble views as you're going through it as well. And that's what I liked about their new developments 2.3 is it allows you to see that much data very clearly. And that brings us to Matterport. So Matterport is kind of the new sexy technology that people have been talking about, but engineers are scared of because they don't know how to measure off of it. But it's super cool because it allows you to have context very quickly. And it allows you to integrate that into a VR experience. It was kind of designed for real estate, and now it's moving more into the AEC world. And all of our projects now, we use the Matterport for every project. So if we scan it with the Faro system, we also scan it with this. And that's just because the modelers, the BIM modelers on the project, they love having kind of unlimited site photos to do their modeling process. And for the time it takes, it's almost a wash. There's almost no cost. I mean, for the Bean Hall project, it was 200 Faro scans, and it was actually 400 Matterport scans. Now Matterport says you can only put 200 up in the cloud at a time. We pushed it, it took 400, and it's still very fast. So here's just a little demo of Timberline Lodge. This is the world famous ski lodge. It was one of 2 places where the movie The Shining was filmed with Jack Nicholson. And so it's kind of a monumental project for myself. I've skied up at Timberline. It's up on Mount Hood, Oregon. It's a beautiful place. And the scanning time to do this entire lodge was about 6 hours. And then it was processed within another, well, less than 24 hours, maybe 10 hours, and it was done. And I gave the link to the marketing people there, and they're sharing that with their folks. So it was just a really fun project, and it also just gives them the ability to know what their space is about. So I want to do a little tiny demo. Can you switch this over to the iPad? So I scanned this space with Matterport. And you can see what it looks like from up here. It was fast. I did this in about 10 or 15 minutes, something like that. And this data is actually measurable, and the smaller the space, the better chance you have of getting an accurate measurement. They say 1%, so if it's a smaller space, your 1% could look like a 1/4 inch, or it could look like a 1/2 inch. The larger the space, the more inaccuracies you might have. Okay, let's switch back to the PowerPoint. Thank you for that. I did a little blog on LinkedIn about Cloud Compare. It was kind of a rough blog in some ways, because what I did is I just simply took registered Faro scans, and I took the Matterport point cloud, which you can now extract, and I put them together in Cloud Compare, and did a little comparison on how accurate they were. So this is making a big assumption, but it is an assumption that the Faro scans were registered correctly. It was a small space, and the accuracy came down to less than 2 millimeter over the contiguous data set. So it seemed right. We did a visual QC. It wasn't put to survey control, but it was a good representative sample, and I think there'll be more to do. So this is in Cloud Compare. This is open source software. So we just picked some control points. It had an RMS value that was pretty low, and this gives you the deviation. So this was a project of a hospital, gym, for a rehab center at St. Vincent's Hospital in Portland, Oregon. And there was a lot of reflectivity in the space, but it also gave us the ability to see the blue is actually where it's within a 1/4 inch, and the red is out of that tolerance. So I set this way down to a 1/4 inch just to see what was happening. And what I saw is the pipes and some of the major non-reflective features were actually lining up. That was really good news. That was telling me Matterport's actually working. And the Matterport scanner is only about a minute and a half per scan, so you can jump through a space very, very quickly and create a point cloud. Here's just some more sort of analyses. We have a 1/2 inch, so there's some red. The green and blue are within tolerance. The blue is definitely within the 1/2 inch. And then we go down to 1 inch, there's a lot of blue going on here. So that just tells us that it's working, and what their claims are actually accurate as far as what they're saying with accuracy with that. And that's exciting because it's the point clouds. We take a comparable point cloud of, say, 200 Faro scans and 400 Matterport scans, and we're getting accuracies down to 1 inch or 2 for that. So and the point cloud size is 500 megabytes for a size of a point cloud that big for the Matterport, and then it's more like 30 to 40 gigabytes for the Faro scan. So you have some software operability issues when you get into the larger point clouds, obviously, and that's why Matterport is so attractive to us when we're doing our projects. And here's some of the projects that we've done with the Matterport, just a ton of them, because they're so fast. And we do a lot of real estate jobs, but we find the AEC is actually more adoptive of this technology right now than AEC. In fact, they don't even understand when I talk about 3D what that means a lot of times. So I have to sort of show them and then enroll them into the process that it is worthwhile for clients to see this remotely for their properties. That's an ongoing sort of battle to sell that product. So we try to just let it speak for itself. Now the conference app, at the bottom of my notes in the conference app, it talks about that I'm presenting this particular module, and what's embedded is the link to that model I just showed you of this stage. So if you want to play around with it later, you can. The last major thing that I want to talk about, which is just a little snippet of what might be to come, and that's point clouds online and the IoT, the Internet of Things. This is a pretty amazing concept for several reasons. One of those, I've been looking at some of the firms here who are doing classification with point clouds, and there's been some awesome developments with that. Additionally, using augmented reality to identify those point clouds and classify them is even a greater egg to follow. It's the carrot that we all want. And there's a group here called Euclidean who has kind of cracked the code on visualizing point clouds online. They're able to see through their unlimited detail algorithms thousands or tens of thousands of point clouds at once because of the way they render them. They do it very cleverly and very smartly, so they're not tapping out your GPU. They're just pulling from the CPU and using your screen pixelation to find out how many they can render at a time. It's very, very clever. So what I'm going to show you, with their permission, is where things might go. Now this is the thing. If you have the Internet of Things and you're able to classify point clouds, and you're able to say, that's a chair in the point cloud, that's a wall, that's an exit sign, that's an E on the exit sign, and you can classify all those things. We have now the IP6 version that's been released, which actually is essentially like taking a web address and assigning it to every grain of sand on the planet times 100. That's a lot of web addresses. So when we talk about point clouds and classification, that makes the way we look at the industry a whole lot different. And that makes the way that we look at the industry as far as vector geometry a whole lot different. So imagine we have a scope that can go into your heart and scan your heart. And it can find the geometry of that heart, and it puts that on the IoT, and it classifies that geometry. Well, it also classifies in the metadata that that is a particular condition that that heart has. And so when we scan somebody's heart across the world, we can do this sort of correlation and say instantly what that person may have as an ailment. This is a revolutionary idea, and the problem, one of the problems with that was how are we going to possibly crunch all this data and visualize that all at the same time? So Euclidean has this software program called Geoverse. And this is real time. They sped it up just a little bit because they're going through menus, but we're looking at a lot of point cloud data, and that's real time. They're navigating with a joystick, you know, like a controller. And this is not a pre-recorded thing. They're navigating real time. It's rendering all of those points and in many, many different ways. So they can put essentially unlimited data sets together, and we can view those simultaneously. And as we zoom, it just pulls up more detail, more detail, and more detail until we're down to a grain of sand of what the point cloud picked up. So now that we can visualize all that data, we can also classify it. And that's something else they've been working on as well, is classifying every point in the point cloud. Right now we have to do it in groups. We have to take point groups and classify them and say, this is a windmill, this is something, this is something. But what if we could classify every single point? And what if we had really, you know, sophisticated filters and cleaning algorithms for the point cloud to make shapes a lot more substantial and meaningful. So that's the exciting development that I see with this data, and it's been a lot of fun to play with it. And I appreciate your time for having me today, and that's the end of my presentation.